take a look at this. So the sympathetic nervous system, this is what happens when you get stressed. This is going to speed up your heart rate. Speed up. Okay? Okay, and then this one is going to slow it down. So type A's, as you can imagine, since they are trying to do more and more and more in a day, their heart is constantly like working at a very, very high rate. And then when you combine it with the toxicity of the anger, that puts so much pressure on the heart. So the number one cause of death is heart disease. I think a lot of you know that, right? So the psychosomatic illness that's associated with the heart is heart disease. Okay? And then you also have heart attack, right? High blood pressure, all those things. I don't want to write everything here, so hopefully you guys can write it here. Could you write high blood pressure and heart attack? Okay, maybe I could write some of it. Okay, heart attack. Okay, now let's go to the lungs. Let's see what happens with the lungs. Here's the lungs. Okay, so what happens to the lungs? What I want you guys to know is that this is all mediated by a chained ganglia in the thoracolumbar area. So pretend that this is your spinal cord right here. All of the sympathetic response happens in a chained event right here, the thoracolumbar area. Thoracolumbar area. So once the hypothalamus triggers the pituitary gland and the HPA axis gets triggered, then this happens as a chain event. It goes brrrp, and everything happens all at once. But the parasympathetic, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens at the craniosacral region, so down here. So the spinal nerves that are in the cranial area and the spinal nerves that are in the sacral region, they control the parasympathetic response. They don't work all at once. This happens fast. You've got short preganglionic, long postganglionic. It just goes, it triggers by the brain and it goes brrr. But here, once you calm down a little bit, it takes much more slower, and it goes very individual, these responses. So this right here, the thoracolumbar, it's set up for your survival. In order for us to survive, if we have a stressful event happen to us, we have to have everything in line real fast and quick. So this sympathetic response is set up for survival. So think about it. If you saw a lion, your heart would have to speed up, but what also would you have to do? Would your lungs have to open up for more oxygen, or would they have to close down? I think if you think of it that way, you can come up with everything. These opens the lungs, and this would be constricts the lungs, because you're getting ready for fight or flight, so you need more oxygen. So what are the psychosomatic illnesses that are associated with the lungs? Well, you've got lung disease. Yes, did you know that? Did you know that a man who is married can smoke twice as many cigarettes as a man who is single? And you say, what? What does that have to do with anything? Is another thing that we're going to find out that mediates stress is social support. And so men that are single, men in general, don't tend to be as into relationships and talking about things and asking for help as women are. Women tend to be more, connected. Like when you see two women meet, they hug each other. How are you? What's going on in your life? Whereas men, when they meet, a lot of times they might just nod their head and not say too much about what's going on in life, just talk about sports, something like that. So married men, they have they have the luxury of having someone in their life where that does take care of them, that can give them support. They get touched more. Married men get touched more than men that are single. And so they found that smoking men who are married, they could smoke many more cigarettes than men that are single, and it's related to the lung disease. So that's interesting. And also a lot of people that smoke will tell you that they smoke more when they're under stress. Another thing that goes with this is, well, let me just tell you this story about rabbits. So if you can imagine, we're doing a study on rabbits, and so let's say there's 5 groups of rabbits, and there's a different lab assistant for each group of rabbits. And unfortunately, they're testing this drug on rabbits to see how fast this drug kills the rabbits. I know it's terrible, but they had to do this for farmers' crops were getting eaten by the rabbit. They were getting ruined by the rabbits. The farmers were losing all their money, so on and so forth. So they were trying to find something that would make the rabbits violently ill or even kill the rabbits. So they were testing this new drug. So you've got a different lab assistant taking care of each group of rabbits, and the rabbits are taking this drug, which is in vials. So at the end of 2 weeks, almost all the rabbits are dead except for a bunch of them in one group. So the big bad researcher goes to this one lab assistant and says, "What did you do? Why are your rabbits still alive?" He goes, I don't know. I gave them the poison. Look, here's all the empty vials." And so the main researcher says, "Well, now we have to repeat this terrible experiment because, we don't understand. Is there something wrong with that? What's going on?" So they get a whole new set of rabbits, and they've got different lab assistants taking care of the rabbits. But this time the main researcher, he's got a two-way mirror, and he's watching this lab assistant with his rabbits. And what he sees is I don't really know how this lab assistant did this, but what he sees is that the lab assistant spends lots of time with the rabbits, petting them, talking to them, "How are you?" strokes them a lot, hugs them, and then he gives them the poison. I mean, I can understand the other lab assistants that they try not to get attached to the rabbits at all, just give them the poison, do this, see them as non-creatures. But whatever, this lab assistant would spend a lot of time with the rabbits, touching them, stroking them, and the same thing happened again. So now the researcher says, "This is crazy. I did watch him. He gave them all the poison. The only thing that was different about him is that he touched and spent time with the rabbits." So then they repeat the experiment one more time with a smaller group of rabbits, but what they do is all the lab assistants have to tactilely stimulate the rabbits before giving them the poison. So they were instructed to pet the rabbits 10 times before giving them the poison. So this time what happened is that many more of the rabbits lived. They found that if mothers go in and touch, like if you've got a premature infant, and that how they keep the premature infant in the incubator, they found that mothers, if they go in and touch the baby 5 times a day, just touch the baby, massage the baby 5 times a day, that baby will gain an average of 30% more weight than a baby that is not touched. Also, interestingly, so you've got lab rats, and they're all the same species of lab rats, but did you know that Japanese lab rats live longer than American lab rats? Same exact species, same exact lab rats, same exact diet, because a lot of people say that, oh, it's the diet, oh, it's the air. No, what they've linked it to is the way that we clean the cages. Americans, the way they clean the cages is they pick up all the rats by the tail, which is stressful to the rats, pick them up by the tail, they stick them all in a box, and then they clean the cages all at once. So all the rats are now thrown in with one another. This is crazy. This is, we're thrown in with all these other rats that we don't know are all thrown in this box, and then they clean the cage. The way the Japanese clean the cages is they have a special lab coat. And in this lab coat there's a pocket. So they take each rat out individual, and it's interesting. They don't pick rats up by the tail. They pick them up by the underbelly. They stick them in the pocket of the lab coat. It's a pocket where the rats can still breathe, but they are trapped in the lab coat, and they clean each cage individually. So the animal is actually being held close to the researcher's body as he's cleaning the cage. So what I'm getting at here is touch seems to be very healing. I mean, if you've seen animals where they're never pet, you can see the difference on their coat. It's not just the diet. So another reason, why married men may live longer. I mean, I think a lot of you know that statistic. Married men live longer, and they always say it's a correlational study, is because touch is actually healing. When they say a hug a day keeps the doctor away, there is something to that. When we are touched, we release a hormone called oxytocin, and oxytocin seems to add healing to our body, release the growth hormone, so on and so forth. Another disease that comes from stress, though, is asthma. Now, some of you are saying, well, wait a second. You told us that the lungs get opened when you're under stress, but asthma, I know, is when someone can't breathe. And yes, you're right. What happens there is a lot of times when we're stressed out, we're not moving in our society. In fact, I'm sure a lot of you know that one of the best things to do for when you're stressed is to exercise. And because that's what your body is built for when you're stressed out. Your body is built for fight or flight. And so by just sitting there thinking about, oh my gosh, I can't believe this traffic won't stop. What am I going to do? My boss is going to yell at me. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to be late. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. You're sitting there and your heart is pounding and everything's going up. And so your lungs open way up. And when your lungs open up, the allergens from the air can get down into the lungs and they aggravate and they create mucus in the lungs so you can't breathe. So most people who are asthmatic will tell you definitely that when they are stressed out, their asthma flares up.